the Overman Warrior Podcast.
Type 1, a planetarization harnessing all of its world's resources. Type 2, a stellar civilization capturing the full energy of its star. Type E3, a galactic civilization wielding the power of an entire
MK
galaxy.
Ultra,
the CIA's program to control minds. Isolate, break down, and program the subject. Now, imagine non-human intelligence running the program. No ethics, 100% efficiency. How it works. Individual survival, ecological depredation, drugs and isolation. Programming, testing and reinforcement. Compliance is tested and reinforced. Control and deployment. The subject acts without memory.
Hi, it's Rich Hoffman here. I've made no attempt to put a cap on my enthusiasm for the new Steven Spielberg movie, Disclosure Day. I've listened to a lot of reviews. It's been out now for several weeks by the time I've done this. And I haven't heard people talk about the most important part of it, I think. The most important part to me wasn't the revelation that aliens had been interacting with Earth for a long time now. This is just a science fiction movie. It's just a story that has characters, and the characters have a narrative that you go as a spectator, and you can either invest in the characters and decide you like them enough to invest a little emotional effort into their plight, and it's fictional, so it's all a level of deception. Filmmakers like Steven Spielberg have to enact a certain level of deception in order to create something that's fictional and make people, an audience, believe in it. And if you're really good at it, you can do it. I think a lot of people have been hung up on the manipulative efforts of the film and why it's successful, the wonderful music by John Williams, and a lot of other kinds of things that come together that make a good movie, good visual effects and whatever it may be. Everybody's getting hung up on the aliens. Oh, well, the alien at the movie it looked kind of fake. It wasn't great. It wasn't Steven Spielberg's best movie. And these are all people, and I've listened to the reviews carefully and the psychology of the reviews. And this is the kind of thing you typically get when you have a change state. And a change state is when you're protecting a previous assumption by rejecting new information. Thinking about a lot of things as I'm thinking about that. But people who put up the resistance to anything new because they want to preserve what they valued of the old, and they may be happy with what they've had. They may be happy considering themselves to be humans being alone in the universe, in this idea that there's another species. And I look at the aliens as just another animal. It was interesting. I had an interesting conversation with one of my grandson. He's very interested in lots of science. And we saw a cool little beetle at the campsite where we were at. And he was an interesting little character. And like I explained to him, he was really interesting to see him out in the wild, not in a zoo somewhere. It was just an interesting looking creature. And we had a long conversation about life forms. And I look at this idea of UAPs and alien interactions. I look at them, you either have sovereignty over your nation, which a nation is a set of ideas, and you either have sovereignty over those ideas. If you have sovereignty over your family, you can't just have, you don't have a family if anybody can just walk in your front door and start using the milk in your refrigerator. You have to work to have the house. You have to work to give your family an environment where they can have, they can lay around in their pajamas and feel like they can expose themselves in a vulnerable state, like various states of undress, states of rest, places where you sleep for 8 to 9 hours, and you don't worry about the person in the room next to you coming in and stabbing you in the middle of the night, okay? Because there's a certain trust you have with the family. And the family is usually built around same ideas. If you have a teenager starts getting crazy or wild or rebelling against the family concept too much, then they violate that trust, and then they're no longer part of that family. You can't have your next door neighbors who might have totally different beliefs, might have rival opinions. one spouse may be more attractive than the other, so the males might fight over exclusive mating rights to that female. So it's not like you can throw everybody together into an act of socialism. And because I bring it up because there's a lot of talk about socialism being an offering in this movie. Obama was connected to Disclosure Day by being on the set, and he's friends with Steven Spielberg. And again, these are people who are trying to manipulate the world and their worldview. There was a lot of talk because there's new. I haven't seen it. My grandkids want to see it. The new Toy Story movie, and I lost interest in that after Disney and Pixar ran off John Lasseter for groping females, employees. You know, when you have these teams and people they bond over the team building exercise, just like with the family effort, you know, you can get a little touchy-feely, even if, you know, the modern politics with Marxism behind it wants to destroy those elements of trust within sovereign groups, families, business climates, nations. Okay, the effort behind Marxism, the philosophy of Marxism, is to strip away all sovereign rights and all ownership premises and have them be shared occurrences. So you find even with when they ran John Lasseter out of Pixar, I found that reprehensible. He's just doing what he always did, and all of a sudden now the rules changed, and touching your coworkers, even if it's mutually accepted practice at the time, became something that you could give leverage over your boss by saying, I found him, he looked at me too long, he looked at my butt too long, or he touched me, touched my shoulder for too long, and I felt it was a sexual threat to my sovereignty, right? So they threw John Lasseter out, and then they made Toy Story 4, which is all about communism. It's Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks and his buddy Steven Spielberg, you know, they talk about communism, Marxism, socialism a lot in Hollywood. Obama certainly was an advocate for socialism. He went to school in Indonesia. Forget about where he was born. He wasn't raised in the United States. And a lot of his influencers through his mother, who was a roving anthropologist that slept with a lot of people, took a lot of nude pictures with those people, and they were communist influences. So the father figures that Obama had in his life were definitely communist. The reason this is important is you have a lot of these kinds of people making movies and expressing themselves, and I like the work they do. I like Disclosure Day for what it means, but the discussions that come after it are often the magic of the movies is the discussion it provokes, because the narrative, the story, the characters are fictional, the circumstances are fictional. And as I was saying about the little beetle at the campsite we saw, I explained to my grandson that this life form, you know, is motivated. It has a conscious parameter that it exists within, and its desire to survive the day, to get access to water or eat food so it can live one more day or procreate, is its total realm of understanding. And it has a social order for which it exists. And then I said it's really, as a complex organism, the ability for a brain to send a signal to little feet to move and walk and do things telepathically, because as we do things, you think something here, you move your finger here, you're having it's an exchange of information that goes through a neural network where an impulse is turned into an action, you know, with a movement of a finger. The leg of a beetle is just as complex. And a lot of the elements that you take for granted as just natural means of movement. My brain's making my hands do this or that. And, you know, at some point you might have Parkinson's and you lose the ability to control those features. The brain is the element that does it. And then when you make it a little more complex or add a few more movements to it, you might get an advanced civilization. like you see with these UAP interactions, alien intelligence that may be looking at Earth as a tourist destination, not its home, just a place to go on vacation and check things out. Maybe you're looking at conservationists from some other place that want to preserve some ancient way of the solar system by eliminating the perpetuation of life that grows into something that, through time dilation, they know what the results of our efforts are going to be 200,000 to 300,000 years or 2 million years in the future, and they're trying to stop it. So they come back here and they invent environmentalists to try and torpedo all the efforts of growing into a productive type 1 civilization. You don't know until you start interacting with these characters. And the first way to interact with them is to admit they exist. And I think that movies like Disclosure Day do a good job of doing that. And I think that the reason why Disclosure Day now, as opposed to some other time, is important, is because you have to have, you had controversies where institutionalized science let everybody down with COVID. We all saw the Tulsi Gabbard discussion, where she admitted that Fauci and everybody built the COVID with gain of function, and it got out of a lab, whether it was on purpose or I think it was on purpose, or by accident. It's dangerous stuff. And the government was in on the cover-up. CIA was in on the cover-up. Can you trust them? CIA is also in on the cover-up of COVID, and I think, or of the disclosure elements. So we're learning that we can't trust any of them. So one way that the left has always, like with slavery, when they realize that they're losing on all fronts, they try to capture a message. And so what the political left Democrats did in the 60s was try to capture the civil rights movement by taking it away from Republicans. Republicans are the ones that ended slavery. And that's certainly what they're going to try and do with disclosure. Yes, these alien entities have always been with us. If you watch the show Ancient Aliens, it's probably much less conspiratory talk now than it was back then when that show first came out. Before the movie Disclosure Day gave people a point of reference to kind of think about these things, which is why it's important. Before they did that, history is going to have perspective, and it's going to be a lot more common to talk about these alien groups. And to me, they're just like a bunch of Asian people or Indian people or people from other places in the world, people from North Korea, people from Russia. You can't just have them coming in your house, ransacking your sovereign domain, drinking your milk, because that's your milk. It's your family. Your daughter is laying on the couch watching TV in just a t-shirt, maybe not wearing a bra, and it's okay at your house because there's a trust environment. She knows she can trust that dad or the brothers aren't going to molest her, so she doesn't have to. She doesn't have to be very secure in that environment. She can let her hair down a little bit and be herself because it's a trusted place. So it's a sovereign domain, your home, your community, your country. There's a set of sovereign ideas in the United States built around the Constitution. So if you're trying to throw out the Constitution, you're trying to have the open borders thing where you have globalism and global citizen movement, which Disney was certainly adhering to, which is why they have failed as a company and they've lost market share, because they went against the human desire to have a sovereign domain of shared ideas. It's hard. The corporate cultures have tried to experiment with this destruction of sovereign ideas, the family unit, the sovereign nation, the sovereign community, branding behind a name. There's a lot of arrogance that goes into these leftist experiments and corporatism, that you can get rid of sovereign ideas and still have a healthy society. And as I said about the beetle, that's a complex life form right there. even though it may be thinking just a couple things today. It might be thinking about where it's going to reproduce, where it's going to get water and food, and where it can get shelter from the elements. 4 things. And that might be the total complexity of its existence. So we looked at the little beetle, and I said, really the aliens that are coming and going from Earth are no different than that little beetle. They have their primary concerns, whatever they may be, and they're interacting. They have technology that supersedes our ability to lock the door and protect our house. So they can just come in our door, and it's a very disconcerting feeling to know that your neighbor might be able to just come into your house and steal your milk. If you have aliens that can come and go at a rapid pace, they don't deal with our laws of physics that we're bound to. Just like that poor little beetle, they have only a limited amount of autonomy that they can function. And we might look at it and say, well, that's just a little beetle. And if I feel like putting it on the ground and stepping on it, I wouldn't lose any sleep over it. I'm certainly not going to be prosecuted for it. And I think it's very scary to the human race to think that we don't have control of our sovereignty with a life form that's interacting with us. Our instinct was to make a deal with it, and then to protect those deals with the kind of violence you saw in Disclosure Day. So I think that's a very real thing, and there's a lot of analysis about how the story of Disclosure Day follows a lot of modern UAP whistleblowers, and the threats to life forms is very much a thing, because those who know and are trying to protect that knowledge that gives them power in the world, obviously want to destroy anybody who might take that power away from them. So that's where everybody's getting hooked on as far as Disclosure Day. But I think the most important elements were what they tried to, Steven Spielberg tried to dispel what the 3-lettered agencies have been doing, and that's MK Ultra. That's the CIA, been doing it for a long time, since the 60s. Remote viewing. If you go through a lot of Spielberg's films throughout the years, especially films like Always, for a long time, the movie Always was my wife and I's favorite Steven Spielberg movie, early 90s. And it deals with ghosts and consciousness, and 2 men who love the same woman, and one guy dies and becomes a ghost, and he has to help his and it's based on an old movie. Spielberg, it's not new to Spielberg, but he did a nice job with it. John Williams did a nice job with the score, of course, as he always does. It's a really well done film. I liked it, always loved it. But there's always there's a homeless guy in it that is speaking, that the ghost is trying to speak to his left behind wife to help her deal with her grieving over him. And he finds as a ghost that he can talk through people who are of questionable sanity. And there's a homeless guy that's barely clinging to life, and he can talk through the homeless person to his wife, who's having a hard time believing that her thoughts that are jumping in her brain are actually coming from him. And this is kind of the premise of Disclosure Day, that these non-human intelligence life forms are using the human race for their own reasons, and that we're vehicles of their innovation or destruction. I would say probably destruction, because they're probably a bunch of traveling hippies throughout the solar system that have conservation efforts in mind to destroy the human race before it becomes a type 1 civilization, which impacts them in the future or the past. And so there's lots of reasons for them doing what they're doing. I think those are the kinds of questions that come up from a good movie like Disclosure Day. And when you have a good artist that could put out a film and really kind of execute it and hit the high notes correctly, it gets people talking about it long after. And that's why Disclosure Day is such a good film. The film itself isn't the point. It's what it provokes as people leave the theater, go out to dinner afterwards, talk at their kitchen tables in their house, with their family members, with their friends, under their sovereign conditions. It takes a movie like that as art, enters your sovereign domain, and then you speak about it within your sovereign conditions, whether it's a nation or whether it's your home or your community. You talk about it within the safe confines of your trusted partners, under sovereign agreements. And a movie like Disclosure Day can get a message into all those sovereign communities and get everybody talking about it, which is why it's an important element, which is why mass communication is such either a detriment, it can be extremely manipulative and dangerous, or it can be the greatest thing in the world. It depends on how you use it. And I think that what's coming out of Disclosure Day is infinitely great for the human race. And I think we had to have some point of entry into this disclosure movement for years. People, to protect their own assumptions of sovereignty, have just outright rejected the evidence and said, I'm not going to believe in little green men coming from some other place. Well, there's at least 4 species of aliens that we know of. Our congressional testimony has told us so, and likely there's more than 30 of them. And there's a federation agreement among them all to trade information, to preserve sovereignty to some extent in trade for things, and to protect that relationship. Yeah, some of these government agencies are willing to kill. In the movie, because Spielberg is a kind of a socialist, and a Democrat, and an anti-capitalist, not always, but sometimes. Hollywood finds itself always at odds because they have to make movies that make money, but yet they're out there advocating for socialism, Marxism, communism, and they never have reconciled those issues, those problems. But it's a good movie, and it's making good money, I think. I hope it does very well. I hope it's very successful, and I hope Spielberg gets back to making those kinds of films. I've enjoyed a lot of his movies. I'm one who liked Catch Me If You Can. I think that's one of his Spielberg's better movies because it's outside his fun. It's outside the childlike wonder of what a human being can do within a safe, sovereign condition. If you really analyze what E.T. was about, E.T. was about the violation of that loss of sovereignty of the family. Here came an alien from outside that space, and Spielberg will tell you that he was very traumatized by his own parents' divorce. The E.T. is about divorce and the children losing the sovereignty of a safe house. And here come E.T. with great powers to unite the family in a way the father left behind and rejected. And then at the end, E.T. leaves, and that abandonment is something a lot of people feel have shared circumstance with. E.T. is about loss of sovereignty and loss of family. And Spielberg, his best movies are about that. Or Catch Me If You Can is about a person who takes advantage of people's trust and sovereignty. And like Aliens, the Leonardo DiCaprio character and the Tom Hanks investigator, who's always in hot pursuit, is being continuously outwitted by his desire to witness the world through sovereign lenses of protected elements of in-the-box thinking. You had the Leonardo DiCaprio played everything outside the box, and he can manipulate everything to his advantage. That's why I think Catch Me If You Can is a great Spielberg movie, a great score by John Williams. And, when you study these works of art, even though I probably would have a lot of political disagreements with Steven Spielberg, I think as an artist, he's done a fantastic job of putting something out there that gets people talking in ways they need to. And that is certainly the deal with Disclosure Day. And what everybody's not talking about. And I think the most important part of it is the MK Ultra 3-lettered agency element to it. They attributed it to aerospace black budget companies out there that are doing this work. But the mind control that they're talking about in Disclosure Day is straight out of the CIA playbook, developed in '67, I think it was, and it's a technology. It's more than 4 decades old. So you can imagine what they're doing with it, or have been doing with it all this time. And I didn't hear anybody talking about it. I think that's the most important part of the movie, and it's certainly the least talked about element. Everybody's talking about the aliens and whether the alien at the end needed to be there, or whether it's fake or not. Everybody agrees that Emily Blunt did a great job with the film, but that the alien at the end looked fake, and was it one of Spielberg's best movies or not, is kind of what everybody kind of protects their emotions by coming out of the theater talking about. But really, it's the loss of sovereignty of a person. And that's what the MK Ultra stuff does. Do you have your thoughts? Can you control your thoughts? Or can a third-party entity, whether it's CIA or an aerospace company, a runaway attachee to these aliens, these non-human entities that have their own motivations in life, and do you have control over your thoughts, over your mind? I think it was very interesting. As I was thinking about this stuff, I thought about Hillary Clinton's defense of her husband, Bill Clinton, and Monica Lewinsky. And when Juanita Broaddrick and Paula Jones and those types were prosecuting Bill Clinton in the 90s for all his bad actions, she would often say to people, do you know what you do? Yeah, I think I know everything I do. I think I have complete control over everything that happens. And I have a very locked door when it comes to people trying to jump in my mind. But I see it in people all the time, where they lose their sovereignty over their own bodies. They lose sovereignty over their mind. And it's just like the disconcerting feeling that people could just come into your house and steal your milk and walk in while you're laying on the couch watching TV. If you don't have a locked door, the locked door in your house is your gateway to your own personal sovereignty. And if you don't have that locked door, if you don't have borders, secure borders, then what values are you protecting? And of course, those who are trying to undo those values want open borders. They want open doors. They want people to not have the ability of intellect to protect their minds and the values of their social understanding to be preserved from their intrusions. It's very dangerous, this idea of loss of sovereignty through MK Ultra and the CIA's utilization of 3-lettered agencies to be able to do it. And I think the first obvious question that people should come out of Disclosure Day saying is not, and I hate to be that guy to say this stuff because it's too far outside the box for the mainstream normies to accept. But I think the most important question coming out of Disclosure Day isn't, oh my gosh, are the aliens landing over my house and have they been stealing me, my loss of time periods? I've had loss of time in my childhood. I can't remember huge blocks of time. Did I get stolen when I was a child or as an adult? And during that lost time, where'd I go? Did the aliens come and steal me and molest my sovereignty, my personal sovereignty? Or are 3-lettered agencies of government, because of the great, like Democrats always do, the things that they're guilty of, they try to hijack and replace like they did with slavery. They made the civil rights movement all about them trying to preserve people of color and their rights to exist when it was a Republican idea. And they stole it from Republicans. I think what you got here is you have government agencies that have been manipulating in the background, and they know they're in trouble. The Obama people are in trouble. Everybody who functioned under Obama is in trouble for the vast covered up. Steven Spielberg is one of them. And you're throwing a bone to civilization by saying, hey, here's some aliens. Look at the aliens. Don't look at all this other stuff. And hey, those evil gotta have an anti-capitalist message. Go after those evil aerospace companies, not the 3-letter agencies like the FBI and the CIA. And then they made an argument for why you need to have more government controlling our relationship with these aliens because we can't handle it, which is essentially the tongue-in-the-cheek argument of the movie. The thing that everybody should be talking about coming out of Disclosure Day is, are the 3-letter agencies actually turning people into assassins like we saw in Las Vegas, the concert shooting there, or a couple killings towards Trump? Notice they don't have the hearings on TV. You don't hear why they think they could do it. They're not talking about all the stuff that bounces in their heads to tell them to become an MK Ultra assassin. because all you have to do is have a picture of somebody and a psychic who can reach into people's personal sovereignty and make them do whatever they want. I mean, have you ever been with a friend or a spouse that all of a sudden turn into like somebody totally different, and they look at you kind of weird, like they're not them? Like you have a third party entity that's all of a sudden using the eyes of someone who you trust to be cameras. You have a camera on. I know people who put tape over their cameras on their laptops or on their iPhones, or they put their phone on the table face down because they're afraid that the face up screen is going to interact with them and pick up what they're saying. It's doing it anyway. All that technology that went into all these phones is the next generation evolution of a lot of that psychic phenomena that was developed from MK Ultra. So you just had an AI program doing it instead of a human consciousness. But it does facial recognition. Where do you think facial recognition comes from? And how you can hold your phone up and it can see you might have whiskers growing on your face, or you might have gained 30 pounds for the first time you open your iPhone up, and it still recognizes your face. Where's that recognition? Where's that technology come from? Where do you think? So the thing that everybody should be talking about coming out of Disclosure Day isn't whether the alien at the end needed to be there, or whether it was fake, or whether there's aliens at all in the story. Do three-lettered agencies have the ability to use mind control to take over your sovereign body and turn you into an instrument of their destruction? And I think the answer is an emphatic yes. And it's the most important part of Disclosure Day that should be discussed much more abundantly. It's the takeaway, the key element, and it's the only thing I think that matters out of the movie that is significant. So MK Ultra, mind control, you don't normally have that kind of stuff in plot points. Spielberg experiments with that stuff a lot. There was a lot of psychic connection in E.T. even, if you remember, his connection to the plant, and as his life was thriving, the plant thrived. He had direct connections with Elliot. What he did, Elliot would copy. They're doing the same thing here in Disclosure Day. And the hint is that this isn't just human imagination. This is technology being expressed through art in popular entertainment that's very dangerous to every one of us, because it ruins the personal sovereignty of people. And if you don't have sovereignty, you don't have free will or thought that means anything, which is kind of the point of Marxism, to attack all elements of sovereignty anyway. And the idea of removing ownership from anything and just having everything be a chaotic set of survival standards and drive us all to becoming like that beetle, just looking to reproduce, eat, and get through the day as a basic biological organism without a whole lot of thought. The attack is against thought, because thought demands sovereignty, and the Marxist movement wants to remove the idea of sovereignty from any kind of discussion. And when you talk about aliens coming in and not respecting our sovereignty because they have technology that supersedes it, it's also the same argument behind the sovereignty of your own intellect, and whether or not third-party entities, aerospace companies, or three-lettered agencies can enter your brain and turn you into their instrument, which was the biggest danger of Disclosure Day. And I think it was the element, the prime storyline of Disclosure Day. And then how faith can destroy that connection and keep them from getting into your brain, which is why you see an anti-Christ sentiment everywhere and among Democrats, and a desire to eliminate the Bible from society because it eliminates faith and makes everybody much easier to control. A lot going on with Disclosure Day. I thought it was a really good piece of work, and not the right things are being talked about. So I gave a good review about it before this one, and this is getting into the details of some of the reasons why it's good, I think, and why it's important, and what people should be thinking about coming out of it, and why you should go see it. Because the discussions that are going to spawn off of it are infinitely important for years to come. Very much so. For decades to come. Anyway, Rich Hoffman here. Share, subscribe, make tomorrow a better day. If you ever read my book, The Gunfighter's Guide to Business, I think you'll love it. Anyway, have a good day. See you later.
In the age of disclosure, you must understand the politics of heaven. Coming soon.
Coming soon, The Politics of Heaven in 2027. A treasure hunt through heaven and all human history.